Welcome. My name is Noemi Guevara, and it's my pleasure as the Director of Alumni Engagement to welcome you to this 49er Industry Chat. Before we start, I would like to inform you this session is being recorded and will live online on our website at csulb.edu/alumni. We also encourage you to use the Q&A box located below to submit any questions to our guest speaker for today. And now I'd like to introduce our moderator for the chat, Lucia Cos. Lucia earned her degree in Spanish in 1975. She was recognized as a distinguished alumna in 2005 and now serves as a council member for the CSULB alumni. Lucia, thank you so much for moderating the chat today, and now I turn it over to you.
Great. Well, good morning. I think we're still in the morning here in Southern California. As a director of financial planning and analysis at the Walt Disney Company, Christina Robertson is responsible for leading the execution, financial review, consolidation, and presentation of departmental forecasts, annual operating plans, and 5-year plans for senior corporate leadership. Christina has over 15 years of corporate finance experience, and it's spanning multiple industries: entertainment, consumer products, aerospace, and transportation, and various organizational levels within Fortune 100 companies. So Christina holds a Master of Business Administration from the UCLA Anderson School and a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, Finance, and International Business from CSULB, where she was the President's Scholar and graduated summa cum laude. Leading today's industry chat, please welcome Christina Robertson.
Thank you, Lucia. It's such a pleasure to be here, and thank you to everyone that's joined today. Hopefully, I think you're being asked to submit questions, so please ask whatever questions I can help with. This hour is really for you, and anything that I can help provide insight on, I'm happy to do so. So maybe I'll just start with my Cal State Long Beach experience. I grew up in Northern California in a small town and was so excited to be accepted into Long Beach State's President's Scholars group. So that was really what led me to come to Cal State Long Beach. And for those of you on the phone that knew President Maxson, that was my introduction into Long Beach. So it was a great experience. I think, to put in context, I went to a very small high school. I was part of a graduating class of 145 students. So then to come to Cal State Long Beach, which is, tens of thousands of students, thinking about how do I find my path here? How do I stand out? How do I lead in school? And it was a lot of exploring about myself and what I wanted to do. I got involved in clubs. I took leadership positions in clubs. I had internships that really ran the gamut. I mean, I supported a real estate broker, learning about that industry. I took an internship abroad in Spain because I had done a study abroad the summer prior and I wanted to go back. So I was able to get an internship in Spain, which was phenomenal. It was more in the operations space. It didn't have a lot to do with what I was studying at the time, which was primarily finance and then also international business. So I really had a passion for the international business side of it. And I thought finance would be the start to my career, but international business would play a part in some way. From there, that internship continued on for me here in Anaheim. I worked on kind of redesigning a supply chain model, which again was kind of outside of what I was studying, but it was just something new and interesting. And I just thought, now is the time to try these different things out and see what fits and what doesn't. From there, I took an internship at Union Bank working in their derivatives group. So I got to kind of get a little flavor for the market side of finance. Also determined that wasn't maybe quite for me. And that's where I landed at Raytheon. So Raytheon came to Long Beach State, did an info night, talked about this leadership development program for finance that they had. And it was really intriguing to me. I had never considered starting my career in aerospace. I just really didn't have any touch points to that industry. But the program itself was really phenomenal. So I was really fortunate that I went through that interview process and was offered a position as part of that leadership program. I think it was in about December of my graduating year. So it was nice because I had a whole semester knowing that this was what my job was going to be when I graduated. So I started at Raytheon. It was a phenomenal program. It lived up to the expectation. It was a 2-year rotational program, which meant that I got to work for 6 months in different corporate finance roles. I spent my first year in California in El Segundo. I spent my second year in Texas in the Dallas area. And then from there, when I graduated from that program, we're kind of left to go, find whatever our next roles were going to be. And I chose to kind of continue to expand my horizons. And I took a job in Florida. So I was in the St. Petersburg, Tampa Bay area of Florida for a couple years, working on pricing. So for our new contracts, doing all the pricing work for the proposals. When I was in Florida, I decided that, I was thinking about getting my MBA. I thought maybe I might go full time. I was, again, maybe just to take a step back, life is about it's about preparation and then these fortunate things that happen to you, that these doors that open and you realizing that they're doors that are opening for you. So that happened for me in Florida in that I had an advocate that I worked for, and she talked to me about my MBA, and I had a clear picture that I was going to go full time. And she was the one who said, well, if you're interested in part-time, the company would love to keep you on and we can find opportunities for you. You don't have to be here in Florida. If there's a program you're interested in that, we have a site nearby, we can figure out how to make that work for you. So she really was the reason why I applied to UCLA Anderson. I wouldn't have done so otherwise. And it was absolutely the right program for me. So I was accepted into the program. I still was in Florida. So then I had to make my way back to California so I could go to school part-time while I was working. And Raytheon did that for me. So they found me a role that made sense for not only for juggling school, but also to expand out my foundation and my work experience. So I went into a financial planning role, which kind of kickstarted, I think, everything that led me to where I'm at now. But in that financial planning role, I could organize what was coming. It was a little bit more, I guess, controllable in a way. So I was able to do that role for a few years while I was going to school.
Christina, can I ask you what, in terms of being key while working with Raytheon at the different locations, how mentoring fits in there? And because you said they looked at you and they knew you delivered and actually kept you on and helped you get further education.
Oh yeah. No, that's a great point. I think throughout your career, you're going to find that you'll have informal and formal mentorship relationships. And you'll also have something which I would call an advocate. So an advocate may not be the person that you're talking to, having those really direct closed door conversations with about what you're going through and how to approach things. But they end up being somebody, and I'll get back to the mentorship part, but I do want to distinguish because, throughout your career, you're going to want to find those advocates, especially as you get further along in your career, because when there are those roles, especially, if there's money behind it in terms of them needing to support you in this way, or if it is a high stakes role, when they're discussing the different options, you're going to want to have more than one person at the table that is bringing up your name as a good option. So it's really important to find those advocates. And they tend to be, in this particular case, I would say she was the lead of the department. So my boss reported into her. And she was very well connected within the company. So knowing then that that was what I wanted to pursue, and her being an advocate, she was able to then leverage her network and her contacts to then, reach out and say, I have this person on my team who, is great. Let's find her a place within the company. What opportunities are there? So she actually paved that path and connected me. And it was, I was talking to several different individuals about what those options could be for me. So that's really where the role of the advocate can come in. And what's really important about that advocate relationship is they need to know what you want to do. You have to be able to articulate what your expectations for yourself are, what your passions are, what you want to pursue. The reason why that came together was because I was upfront with her about wanting to go get my MBA. And then she presented an alternate solution as to how I could do that, because she was looking out for me. So without being upfront and honest about what you're trying to do, and I've done this in a lot of different ways as well, like even trying to find new roles and being transparent when I'm going after new roles and why I'm doing that, it almost allows people the opportunity, if you will, to give you an alternate path. So if you're thinking this, allow them to weigh in, because you may not know what you don't know. If you don't have that conversation and you do it all kind of in isolation, and this is something I see happen so many times. I don't even know if this was something I would have talked about today. So I'm really glad Lucy asked the question, and I'm probably going off in a complete different tangent, but I think this is
this is good for the listeners.
I think this is very important. One of the biggest mistakes I see with our high potential, individuals that are earlier on in their career is they're not transparent about how they're thinking about their career. And by the way, you don't have to have it fully formulated. I think having, even kind of coming to the table and saying, I don't actually know, but here are some things I'm interested in, and here's what I'm thinking I want to do in the long term. It will open doors for you to have those conversations, because I can't tell you how many times I'm in planning meetings now and we're talking about the talent on our team and thinking about what opportunities we might be able to pursue for them. I also think about where I can reach out into my network to help connect people, in terms of, if that's a career path or that they want to pursue. I think about who I can connect them with. So the more that I know and the more information that I have, the more I can weigh in and the more I can lean in and the more that I can help. But if I don't have any of that information, I won't do anything. I can't do anything. I don't know how to help you. And oftentimes I think there are some missed opportunities. And I do see people that either leave our department or go off and do something else, and it's a big surprise and we didn't know. And I'm always happy for individuals that are able to pursue what they want to go do. And, I'm always happy for individuals that get great opportunities like that. But at the same time, I just am disappointed that there was probably a missed opportunity where we could have helped as well, give them maybe a fuller bench of options that may have worked for them, so that they could, so that they weren't looking at maybe that one thing in isolation. So.
Great. Okay, I think that was a great segue out of what you were talking about. Now you can come back.
No, that's great. So then, at Raytheon, I ended up staying after my MBA, maybe 2 or 3 more years. I took a manager role at that point in time, and I was doing really soup to nuts, everything under the sun in corporate finance for 2 product lines. So everything I had kind of learned up to that point really fed into what that role was. I was doing everything from, contract pursuit at the very beginning stages to the contract closure process and everything in between. And I just got to this point where I thought, I've been in aerospace for just under 10 years. I didn't quite hit my 10-year mark, but I was close to doing that. And I thought it might be good to pivot and do something different and get different industry experience. And I think one of the things to recognize is that corporate finance exists in every industry. So the skill sets that you learn, especially in financial planning and analysis, every company has financial planning and analysis. So it's just about learning the industry, the business, whatnot. That takes time, but really that's what it comes down to. The difference between working in, aerospace and working in entertainment, it does come down to the businesses are totally different, but a lot of the financial planning processes and approach, there's a lot of crossover. So I was able to leverage everything I had learned at Raytheon in my new role at Disney, which is great. And that's really, and we can talk a little bit later about how I did that pivot to a more granular detail. But yeah, I've been with Disney now for 6 years. A lot of the principles I learned at Raytheon and the rotations and doing different roles and getting different experience, I've translated into my career at Disney. So I'm now on my third role at Disney. I started in the consumer products business, working at the business unit level. So pulling together all the forecasts of all the different parts of that business and then sending that to corporate. Then I moved to the corporate team where I was kind of getting that really 50,000 foot view of the company. And then this role that I'm in now is still within the corporate team, but now I'm a little more on the operational side and supporting our corporate departments in their budgeting, forecasting, and any kind of ad hoc analysis needs that they need. So more of like a finance business partner, like a mini CFO for our department leads.
So where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
It's a good question. Hopefully at Disney. If anything, I mean, I have a very unique resume in that, when I joined Disney, HR was surprised that I had been at Raytheon for so long. But I think it's because I've learned how to navigate through large companies and get different experiences. So even though I stayed at Raytheon for 10 years, I wasn't stagnant. I was able to work in a lot of different business areas. I was able to work in a lot of different locations. I got a lot of experiences within the one company. And I see the same thing for Disney, and even more so, because at Disney, not only, is it, again, a large company, but we play in different industries. I mean, I think we talk about it as entertainment, but we have theme parks that are completely different than how we look at, making and distributing content. And even, I mean, we can talk about industry changes, but the industry is on a hyperdrive change right now with everything that's been going on with streaming, and, Netflix has completely disrupted the industry. So there's just a lot going on and a lot to learn and be challenged by. So the way I approach my career now is different than maybe how I did earlier on. And it's very much about how will I'm very open. One is I'm very open to what the next opportunity is. So I'm just kind of try to keep an eye on what doors might open. And for whatever the next role will be for me, I think it's really about evaluating for that role, what doors does it open? What new challenges will it bring to me? How will I grow as a professional in that role? But also too, an evaluation of, does it close any doors for me? Does it put me into a niche that I may not want to stay in long term? So I think those are just important questions to ask for any one role. What doors does it open? What doors may it close? And are you aware of that? And not just evaluate that on your own, but talk to a lot of people about that too.
That's a great, I don't know that I've heard anyone put it that way in a lot of the talks we've listened to. And then you talked about the transferable skills. How important is it to keep track of all of the different skill sets that could help you into your next move or whatever? But give us a little bit of that. And then I have some actual questions from some of the listeners that are coming in.
Yeah. So I think and I think this also depends on where you are in your career. I think if you're thinking about kind of entry level and you're thinking about, you're early on in your career and you're trying to figure out that next role, the best thing to do is to pull job postings that you're interested in and look at what the requirements are, look what they're asking for, and then think about what experiences you have that could illustrate or demonstrate competencies or, your ability to do the parts of the job. somebody gave me great advice before that I still use, is to look at, literally dissect the job posting down and make sure you can talk to everything in that posting. If you can't, if there are gaps, that's where you got to go focus. So it's going to be unique for everybody, right? But where there are gaps, figure out where you're going to focus on those. If there are things that are maybe very specific, the question would be, are there things that you've done that can illustrate your ability to learn and to do whatever they're specifically asking for? So, really dissect and look at it in that way. As you go later on in your career, and there might be those opportunities even early in your career where somebody, and again, I think this goes back to the point on mentorship. Whether you're having conversations with a mentor, I have really direct conversations with my boss about my development needs, about my different experiences, about what I want to do next, what could I potentially do next. And that's actually what led me to my current role, was that I had, if you kind of look at some of my different experiences, I had really a lot of direct financial planning experience, and kind of doing the analysis, pulling the numbers together, even crafting the storylines. And he saw a need that it would be really, and he actually was selling this role to me in a way, and talking to me about, this will kind of expand your tool set a little bit. It will allow you to figure out how to present this information and be more comfortable in an executive setting. So whereas in the last role, we were packaging information for an executive review, we weren't always delivering at that level. In my current role, I'm talking at an executive level, usually, once a day, if not multiple times a day, especially now we're going through our forecasting. So we're meeting with all of the executives and having to talk through with them the financials and what's important for them to understand. So that's really helped me get a lot more comfortable in those settings, which is something I needed. And then it's also about the operational and some of the special ad hoc projects. So we're working on a lot of things that helps the leaders of these departments make decisions. So thinking through, how do we set up the analysis? How do we package it? What are the considerations we need to be aware of? Who all do we need to have bought into this? So it's been great, because I think this experience will translate to whatever I do next. But it was, somebody had to point it out to me, and like, I think this is where you need to grow next.
So I'm going to take a couple of steps back, because a lot of questions have come in. So is being involved in the FP&A out of college attainable?
Yeah, we hire straight out of college. What we're looking for out of college is usually, we do look for people that have work experience. You don't need to have work experience in FP&A, but what we're looking for is some kind of work experience, or some ability to do some analysis, work with data, be detail oriented. Excel is a big one. We are looking for, we'll teach Excel. We can teach it, but we needed somebody that has a base level. We actually do an Excel test as part of our interview process. And it's not it's not necessarily a deciding factor, but it is something that we like to understand. Where are you at? Are you at a 10? And it's really just going to be teaching you how we work in our processes? Or is it at like a 5? And then we'll kind of assess, okay, where are the areas we might need to focus? But when you come in, but we'll do the training with you. We just want to know that you can learn it.
So when we talk about experience, it doesn't necessarily mean working for a company, but it could be internships and
yes.
Are the clubs that you belong to while you were on campus, on either campus, how did that happen? How did that happen, or could it happen through connections you make in those particular clubs?
Yeah, I mean, look, it could even be nonprofit work. I would especially say right now in the environment that we're in, I think it does take some creativity because I do know there's probably not as many internships available as there have been in the past. So I know I can appreciate that the landscape has changed significantly. I think it's really about being creative in terms of what you're doing. I think one of the big things for those of you that are still in school is to make sure that you keep in mind why you're in school. Your number one priority is to launch your career. So, you know, you don't have to have a perfect view of what that is, because I know that feels very weighty. And that's what it felt like for me when I was in school, that any decision I made was going to determine the rest of my life. Maybe to put that in context, you know, when you get into the job market, you're going to be working for over 40 years. If you start in your early 20s, let's say you retire right on time, it's going to be over 40 years you're going to spend in the job market. So you're going to have a lot of time to kind of figure out what is right for you. And sometimes those roles where you really don't like what you're doing are just as important as the roles that when you find that you love what you're doing, because if you're doing something and you don't like it, I mean, case in point, I did a lot of internships that were not FP&A related, you know, and I learned that I didn't want to work in real estate, as an example. I didn't want to be, you know, an agent or a broker. That wasn't my space. I wasn't that interested in it. You know, I also found out I didn't want to work in financial markets. But what I was able to illustrate is to talk to attention to detail, you know, analysis and things that I had been doing in those roles. And I was able to kind of talk about the experiences and my ability to learn and to pivot for what each one of those roles required. So the same thing, is there a, you know, charity or a nonprofit group that you are involved with, maybe from a volunteering perspective? Could they use some help with, I don't know, could you partner with their CFO or whoever's doing their finances? Could you offer to volunteer to help them with that? So volunteering isn't just about your service and in that way of, I'm going to go, you know, pack a box for, you know, the soup kitchen or whatnot. It's not just about that. It can also be, what can you support? Can you volunteer your time on the financial side? And I'm sure there's a lot of opportunity for something like that. So there's a creative area that you could reach out and say, hey, I am willing to donate 10 hours of my.
You were talking about the way that you've used and accumulated your skill sets, or your tool, the tools in terms of being able to move within a company and outside and onto other companies. So one of the questions, and I hope I can find it again, is that, oh no, that went away too. So let me see if I can remember. One was, would you recommend going the route you did by getting your MBA part-time?
That's a good question. I think it depends on what you're trying to do with your MBA. And it depends on a lot of different things, right? I mean, if I look at my experience in my MBA, I had a lot of support from the company, not only support in my career and my career development, but also in paying for my MBA as well. So when all was said and done, I believe Raytheon paid for about 2/3 of my degree, which is significant. And MBAs now have a price tag of well over $100,000. It doesn't matter if you go part-time in a 3-year program, which is what I did, or if you go in a 2-year program, it's the same price. It's just a matter of you're paying it in 2 years versus 3. I will say, when I finished school, it was great because I had 3 years of work experience under my belt. If you go full-time, you're foregoing the work experience for the full-time experience of school. So I had 3 years of work experience under my belt. I had about 2/3 of the degree already paid for. I still took out loans just from a cash flow perspective. And I think all of those are personal choices, but just so you know, loans and grants and all of that is still available for you from an MBA perspective when you get there. So I encourage you to take a look at that. Some of the loans I got, I actually They didn't start to accrue interest until graduation. So those were really great options. So if you apply, you can figure out what you're at least, been approved for, and you can decide what you want to draw upon. So I would encourage you to do that. That wasn't something I necessarily, I had to kind of discover that a little bit on my own. And then, and also too, I was able to pay for my loans during school too, which is fantastic. So I already got into kind of paying off my loans even from the first year of school. What was good for me is that all of that, I also really, by having to balance work and school, I learned incredible prioritization skills that I still use today. So it forced me to figure out what is most important and how I'm going to spend my time. Because time really did become a finite resource at that point in time, and you can't do everything to perfection. So you have to really figure out how you're going to balance things, how to get in front of things. Inevitably, work and school would be crazy at the same time, and figure out how to navigate through that without dropping the ball. That was really tough to kind of figure out how to go through that. But I learned so many lessons about myself. The other thing I will say is no matter what you're going through, if you look to your right or you look to your left, somebody is going through something that is so much crazier than whatever you might be experiencing. So that also kind of helped keep things in perspective for me.
Well, and Christina, the fact that the company you were working at helped you, people need to start asking a lot more questions when they go and work for these large companies, because they will support, paying, or, actually support you going through college if you've got what it takes to stay there. And it's you're an investment.
Yes, I think it's important to understand what the companies will pay for, because that's part of the equation. And I kind of think of it as a little bit of an ROI analysis. So all that said, I was very much going to school to augment my career. So I knew I wanted to stay in finance, in corporate finance, and I just wanted to bench up with the MBA. And the thing I took away more were the soft skills and the how to work in teams effectively, how to be able to communicate information to non-financial individuals, how to get a better perspective of the company as a whole and where finance fits within it. So those are some of the things I took away. That said, if you are thinking you want to do a full pivot, you can do that in a part-time program. You can absolutely do that. All the resources are there, especially at Anderson. They full access to everything that the full-time program has. You just have to maybe at some point take a step back away from your current role to be able to focus on that in a full-time basis near the end of your degree. However, I do think, look, if you want to get into consulting and if you want to get into investment banking, and that is a full pivot from what you're currently doing, a full-time program that is very focused on recruiting and all of the elements. I mean, from day one, you walk in and you're starting the recruiting process. So if you have a clear picture that is what you want to do, then going full-time probably makes sense. But then also to make sure that you're going to a full-time program that look at the hiring. If you're in a top 10 program, you're going to be fine, but just keep that in mind too. I don't know if you get further down in the rankings, I would be more thoughtful about why you're getting the MBA. At the end of the day, you're spending a lot of money. Why are you getting the MBA, and what return are you expecting to get out of it? What is it going to give you? And all of that is really important. Do an analysis. We're all kind of interested in finance, right? So do the analysis and decide if the investment is worth the return that you're expecting.
So I guess one of the questions here was, for a finance major, what recommendations do you have for a minor to help my resume stand out? I'm not sure if they're talking about a minor in terms of a degree or they're a minor.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I was really into this idea of the minor as well. I mean, I did get a Spanish minor, again, because I had that interest in international business. If you're in finance, the minor isn't going to make your resume stand out, to be honest with you. And this is for, I think some of the individuals on the phone also might be econ majors. Econ is just as we're just as open to econ majors in the finance world. So, you should feel confident that you can apply to finance roles with an econ degree. But I actually think the more critical part of your resume, rather than going after the minor, is, how is your GPA for your major? Are you like on point there? Because companies will look at that. I look at that. I think it's a leading indicator of how somebody's going to do, to be honest. So is your GPA where it needs to be? And what else are you rounding out your experience with? So do you have internships? Are there leadership examples in your resume, whether that's, again, through a club? Did you organize some event? What leadership things have you done? Oftentimes I see students that say they have participation on the resume, and participation's fine, but it's not going to be a distinguishing factor. So I would say, rather than the minor, focus on the other elements of your resume, and also think about what your resume looked like when you applied to college. They weren't just looking at your grades and the courses you took in high school. They were looking at the rounded whole person.
Right.
And companies do the same thing. They want to know, are you going to come to work and do your 8 to 5 and leave?
Right.
Or are you going to be dedicated to your personal development, your growth? Are you going to be motivated beyond that? And that's what we're kind of looking for. And are you moldable, coachable? Can you learn? Flexible? Those are things. So what are you doing to demonstrate all of that?
So Christina, you mentioned leadership, and that was one of the questions that I lost when we went through that blip. But you're talking about it now, but the leadership can start while you're in school.
Yes.
By the programs like you, I saw that you had leadership at Cal State Long Beach. So can you just speak to how that kind of spurred on this whole leadership piece too?
Yeah, I mean, at Long Beach State, I was involved in clubs early on. I mean, I think in my, maybe not my freshman year. I think my freshman year, I was just reacclimating to school. But I think in my sophomore year, I started to get involved in the business clubs. I joined International Business Association, which kind of led me to, I was also in the finance or club. I don't remember, FMA, maybe Finance Management Association, I believe. I also was involved in the Marketing Association because I just thought whatever they were doing was super interesting. But I just got involved in these different organizations. And then eventually, because IBA was so small, I just got to know the leadership team really well. I really admired the president. And that just led to relationships that built. And then I think the next year I ran for one of the leadership roles on IBA and got that. So then, the whole next year it was about planning out what we were going to do and having to think through the programming and how we communicate to members. And so there was a lot involved in what that role was. And then it led me to actually run for the president role within IBA. And as part of that, I got to, again, do more of that, but also influence the overall leadership team. I got to go to, there were meetings in Long Beach, I think with, I don't even remember who it was, but I remember maybe some business organization that was involved with International Business Association. I got to go to those meetings on a monthly basis and interact with actual, professionals in their different industries, and I got to make those connections. So there was, and it led me also to be part of ABSOC as well, which, we got to influence a little bit about what was happening in the school. And so that would be an example of, leadership roles I was able to take on. And then I was able to talk a lot about that in my interview setting of how how did I go about organizing these things, influencing, how did I communicate, how do we look at, we looked at stats on who attended events, and, you always wanted to get more participants and whatnot. So there's a lot there. And that was just a school organization. So there's a lot you can do just on campus in terms of those leadership skill sets. I'm sure there's others I'm kind of like not thinking about right now, but that's a clear example for me of
well, And I think I noticed also that, you know, you did study abroad, and that adds to your resume as well, correct?
Yes.
Sure, it came up in the interviews.
Yeah. And that, you know, again, that was just, again, it gave me another perspective. You know, I got to, my study abroad was mostly just studying Spanish. So I didn't, and it was for a summer. I didn't actually want to take the full school year off because I didn't want to miss out on the things happening at Long Beach State, but I just chose to do a summer program, and that was really great. I mean, I ended up spending over 2 months. I think the program itself was 2 months, and then I spent a little bit of extra time.
Yeah.
But then that led to my internship.
Right. See, there's connections. I know we're supposed to have 2 more minutes. I've just asked to see if we're going to gain the time we lost. But what was the biggest change going from Raytheon to Disney? Do you think?
The cultures are totally different.
Yeah.
The cultures and the way that the career paths are different too. So I don't think I appreciated when you're in a large company for as long as I had been, and I had worked in a lot of different parts of the organization at a very large network, at a very wide and deep network within Raytheon that I didn't fully appreciate until I went to Disney, because then I had to start over. Now my network at Disney has grown over the 6 years, but it takes time. So starting over and not knowing who to call about something, or not even knowing what I didn't know, just having to take a moment and just realize that's okay, because I knew so much coming from Raytheon, and I had, you know, just starting over, it's a very humbling experience. So
I have a question here too, and it's kind of what COVID has changed the different industries. And you mentioned the whole thing about the streaming and Netflix having disrupted the industry. So can you share more about, from a finance perspective, or within your own scope of strategy and everything, you know, are there technology changes that are happening? What skill sets that you have to be prepared for, and speak to when you're going for a job also?
yeah, no, good questions. And it's interesting because within corporate finance, I think there's shifts. And then obviously within the entertainment industry, there's a lot of shifts. So I think within finance, I'll talk a little bit more about that, because this is about corporate finance. There is a lot of focus on finance transformation. And really what that means is, how do we do more with the same or less? How do we provide better analysis? How do we partner better with the business? How do we remain flexible and nimble to changes? Because if you think about it, we have all of these systems that are, you know, very structured and around whatever the organization is. Since I've been at Disney, I've seen at least 3 different reorganizations in the 6 years that I've been there, which that requires everything that we had built to be broken and then rebuilt. So, you know, and it feels like the pace of that is, as the industry changes, the company has to shift and adjust. And that changes everything in the, you know, how we look at the financials of the company too. So, you know, I think the biggest thing is, you know, how are you flexible? How are you, that would be one of the biggest things, is how is finance flexible? How are we flexing to what the business needs? And can we do things quicker? Can we be more accurate? Can we be more insightful? And that's kind of constantly where the industry is being pushed to. All that said, I think that ERP systems, which is basically like your SAP, or, you know, those Oracle, you can learn those when you come to the company. You'll learn whatever the configuration is in the company that you work in. Excel will still be a big deal. So I think Excel is definitely, having a skill set there is really important. And then having an understanding of the industry that you're interested in, the company. So making sure that you're prepared, not only on the finance side, but what have you done to learn more about the industry and the company? You can do that through news, earnings calls, your network, people that you know that have worked in the company or the industry.
Now, Christina, you can also Google to see what the changes are in industry based on COVID, or the new. we've been given another 3 to 4 minutes, so I'd like for you to kind of someone asked this one specifically, was where can I find it? Where do you find inspiration, and how do you stay excited about your industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, they're probably two different things. I mean, my inspiration comes from taking time away. You'll be surprised. I would encourage all of you. Most companies have vacation allotments. I would 100% encourage you not to lose any of those allotments. Be smart about when you take them, obviously. But vacation and taking time away is so important to reset. I can't tell you how many times I've solved a problem because I actually stepped away from it for a week and I disconnected. And when I came back, I had the energy and the insight into what I needed to solve. I mean, I've built entire models because I stepped away and was able to come back a week later kind of fresh to it. So there's power in recharging in whatever that is for you, whether it's for that day or whether it's to take the kind of extended vacation away or whatever that is for you, I think, and truly disconnecting because we're so connected in this day and age. So really just turning it off and letting yourself decompress, I think is so important. And there was another part of that question that was how do I
stay excited about?
Oh, and then the other part of that is find colleagues in your industry. I think the nice thing about working at Disney now, which I didn't do so much at Raytheon, was I'm really connected to what's happening in the industry and the news cycles and what announcements we're making. And so I actively have conversations with peers about this all the time. So we'll connect and like react to things or talk through what we think it'll mean for us in the long run. So it kind of keeps everything connected. And I love to hear everybody else's perspectives because I have colleagues that I've worked with in corporate that have gone to work in other parts of the business. So when we all come together and kind of talk about the industry, we're seeing it from different perspectives and it really enriches the conversation.
So Christina, we have maybe a minute for your final words. And I know that people, Noemi will speak to this, but they can reach you, after this or,
yes,
or ask questions. So or final last words.
No, my final last words is, I guess the thing is there'll be ups and downs. Like, I think we've all experienced that this year. You're going to have ups and downs. I've had many this year, but I think just extend that beyond too. You're going to have ups and downs in your career. There were times when I felt really lost about what the next step was going to be. There have been times I've made major mistakes that, were difficult to have to own up to and admit that I had made, those major mistakes. So you're going to have failures and you're going to have people that tell you no, and there's going to be doors that are closed. And really at the end of the day, it comes down to your own perseverance. So having clarity in what is important to yourself and what you want to prioritize is going to be really important so that you can move through that. So I really look at right now what we're going through. If you haven't done so already, hopefully you have. Take a deep breath and what do you want out of life? What do you want out of your career? And make sure you play the long game and make sure you're kind to yourself in those moments where things don't go the way that you wanted them to go. I really do feel like we're all on some path and, things do work out the way that they're meant to in the end, but sometimes it's not the path you expected to be on. Where I'm at today, I could not have envisioned for myself when I graduated from Long Beach State over 15 years ago. But here I am, and I'm really happy with the journey that I've taken to get here. And it's not just about being here, but it's the journey I took to get here. So just keep that all in mind as you go forward.
Thank you so much, Christina. I'm going to turn it back over to Noemi. And sorry for the big glitch, folks, but we're back. We're here.
It's all about how you react to it, right?
Right.
Christina, before we go, would people follow you on LinkedIn? Are you on LinkedIn? And could they, reach out to you and connect?
Yes.
Or they could email us and we could connect them to you. Would you be
Yeah,
open to that?
I'm on LinkedIn, so please feel free to message me there or send me a note. I'm also, you can email me directly if you'd like. My email is just christina.robertson@disney.com. So pretty straightforward. Thank you for this time. I really enjoyed myself. I really appreciate it.
Great. Well, thank you for a very inspirational conversation. Thank you, Lucia, for moderating. And thank you. We apologize for our glitch, but this session was recorded and it will live on our website. And please follow us on social media for future chats like this. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.